Hooray! More depressing news as a German town votes for a fascist for the first time in a while. If only we'd done a bit more liberal pontificating about reunification. The rise of Nazism will certainly help encourage the immigrants that German businesses need so much. Meanwhile, German lawyers prosecute Iranian judges and Russian generals. Lucky we have a soothing whiskey and ginger. Phew!
Hello everyone, it's time for another episode of Megan's Megacan. I'm Megan, I'm here in Berlin, I'm with ex-Berliner Magazine and Conrad Werner. Hello Conrad.
Hello.
It's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah, I know, we leave it too long I think. Well, we do
we've been busy.
Yeah, things just
You've
keep
been
happening.
busy. Life
Gets in the way.
But hopefully people are still listening, we very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
How are things with you?
Oh, alright. Getting along, trying not to think about the state of the world. It helps if you've got a garden. I mean, it helps if you've got something to tend.
I do think so, yes. I was out at my little garden at the weekend.
And
it's doing okay, despite the fact that either they're being baked alive in the earth or pummeled with torrential rain. My plants are okay. It's a bit flat.
It does the soul good to tend to greenery.
It does. Everyone get a little plant or something. Honestly, houseplants have changed my relationship to my apartment. Anyway. Going to need some booze today because... once again, I always think that when we record on a Monday as opposed to the usual Friday, there's like a level of seriousness to it. I mean, it's all serious, but maybe Friday actually brings more levity. Whereas on Monday, there's nothing to paper over the cracks. But we do have some mega hands. I just got ginger today.
Oh, good.
There was actually some new ones, and we can try them next time. But they were only 250 mils, and I was catching up with the news before I got here because sometimes I like to think maybe I could be a little informed. And we've got some fascists in actual power.
Yeah.
So I was like, 250 mils is just not going to fucking cut it.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to that.
And also ginger, good for nausea, and I am sick to my stomach with this.
Okay. Ooh, lovely.
Oh, it's so good, JD and ginger.
Makes me feel better already.
I don't know, thank God. All right.
Okay, so do you want to take over this story since you've been reading about it?
Sort of.
You're talking about the Landkreis Sonneberg in Thüringen.
So there's a big to-do in Germany because yesterday there was a runoff vote in one of the constituencies. What is a Landkreis?
It's a local district council.
Yes, yeah. And a council election in Thüringen, which is in the former East Germany. And the candidate there were two candidates in the runoff. One was for the AfD and one was for the CDU. And despite there being this big call from all the other parties being like, for the love of God, everybody go and vote, go out and vote for the CDU candidate, the AfD lad, something Sesselman, what's his name? Richard Sesselman? Robert Sesselman, won with 53% of the vote. And apparently, the participation rate was really high for this type of election. It was almost 60%.
It's not good, is it? It's
no.
Yeah, it's a small population. 54,000 people live there, and it is. We should point out just a council election. It's not a state election, and so
not fucking yet.
His powers are rather limited, even though I gather his campaign was very much based on national issues. So he was all anti-immigration and anti-climate protection measures.
Yeah, it's really funny. He was like, no windmills, or against windmills, for diesel. Yeah. Close the borders. Save women from Islam.
All of which, I mean, as a local councillor, you don't really have a lot of power to do those things.
I don't think
it's more like it's more like you can decide.
Have the ear of Islam, no.
You can,
yeah.
I mean, you can stop the cycle paths, probably,
Possibly.
Possibly. I mean, you do that kind of thing. Which, in fact, that has been a story in Berlin. Have you heard about this? Just to sidetrack you.
Yeah. What have they done now? What?
Well, we have a CDU mayor now, and one of the things the CDU has, the first things they've done is stop all future cycle path infrastructure in Berlin. They've stopped all the ongoing cycle paths and are to be stopped immediately, which is a kind of a
That's a very, very odd decision.
Well, it's like their big thing in it, is they just love cars.
Well, build more. What?
Well, anyway, so go on. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just sort of got a bit sidetracked.
I
there.
just don't know with this
So
country.
yeah.
So
AFD, and this is in a time when the AFD is in fact being investigated and under surveillance by what's in German called the Office for the Protection of the Constitution.
yes, Verfassungsschutz actually sounds quite sexy. Yeah, in Thüringen as well, not just on a national level, from what I understand, but also in Thüringen, Thuringia, to give it its Lord of the Rings name.
Do you want to know what the Office for the Protection of the Constitution does?
Yes, why not?
They're often called the Domestic Intelligence Agency. They're supposed to keep tabs on political extremists and any group that is considered a threat to Germany's democratic order is often under surveillance. And then they bring out a report every year. They brought out their annual report a couple of weeks ago, and then in that they say, they count up how many far-right extremists that they've found and how many left-wing extremists and how many Islamic extremists they found, and then they say and then they have a number of how many of these are gewaltorientiert, orientated around violence.
Yes.
And so there's like a certain number of however many people of all these different groups.
Okay.
So that's what they do. And the AFD has been like a Verdachtsfall for a long time, and they announced that they were going to put them into like the higher up level of surveillance so that they can track their phone calls and everything. Which was they announced this last year sometime, and that is now subject of a court case. Like the AFD has sued, has appealed against this decision, and now it's like going through the courts about whether or not they can do that. Anyway, but yeah. So we are talking about a party which does have bona fide fascists in it, according to the German state and according to the law as well. There's Björn Höcke. We've talked about him for a while.
Yeah.
There was a famous court decision a couple of years ago that said it was legal to call him a fascist.
Yeah. He sort of did a libel suit or like defamation thing, and they were like, no, actually, you can be called a fascist.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, and I think, because everyone now likes to be like, well, technically, they're not actually a fascist party because whatever, and but I was listening to an interesting podcast about some man who studies fascism at a UK university. And he was like, well, there's two kind of ways in which you can use the word fascist. One is ones whose politics are calling for a new world order, that kind of thing, which would be your fascist on a technical level. But then there's also now the colloquial way in which we use it, which is also kind of valid when we want to refer to populism, to exactly this kind of party. I don't know, I was trying to think about what is enraging me about this at the moment, and I think I listened to it on like Deutschlandfunk, which would be BBC radio, I guess. Then also the coverage of it on the Tagesschau, which is a big TV channel. Also, I guess would be like the BBC.
Yeah, it's like BBC TV news. News at 10.
And then also the opinion piece in the Taz, which is kind of a mainstream, like well-established sort of news outlet, but very much left-wing. And I swear to God, there was more time in all of this talking about how this was like really a lesson for the CDU, that we need to learn, they need to learn from this, because people are voting because they are like unhappy with the government, they're unhappy with the history of like how East Germany has been reintegrated into the whole of Germany and all of that kind of shit show, which was a shit, like it was fucking poorly handled. But also there's this gaping hole where we all need to be screaming, people are voting for fascists. And like actually interrogating this and interrogating these politicians I listen to, and it's like all this same people are like, oh, well, people in East Germany don't want to be talked about and don't want to be, you know, they want to feel like they're a part of Germany. But then all we do is kind of leave them out of the thing as if they're children who don't know what they're doing and talk about how people are pissed off with the CDU. And it's like, no, they're choosing. It's really odd. Like, and I just feel like we're letting two things happen. Like, we let these voters and the very dodgy people that they're voting for off the hook when our job in media is to be like, hey, what's going on? People of fucking Sonneberg, what's your deal? And everyone's like too afraid to be, you know. And the other thing is then we normalize it because people can say, oh, well, I'm voting for the AfD as a protest vote. If someone won the first election and then you turn out in massive numbers in the runoffs, that's not a fucking protest vote.
No.
Like, it's a vote that is voting people into power, and the AfD are now the most popular party in several states, particularly in the former East. And the end of this fucking interview on the Deutschlandfunk with a guy that's been like in the Landkreis parliament in another little Landkreis in Thüringen. And the journalist was like, oh, well, will you work with Sesselmann? Na klar. And it was like this, I'm a professional and I don't know this man. But if he's klug, if he's smart and anspruchsvoll, so like if he's got high standards, then, you know, of course. What? The man's just been voted in on a fucking fascist platform and you're saying, oh, well, I don't really know about him. Fucking find out. And then start saying things like, I'm absolutely disgusted that this man gets to go around saying this kind of stuff. This is what happened. It's literally what happened before. And then everyone's going to be like, oh, well, we didn't really know that they were that bad. We were unhappy with the Treaty of Versailles. Fine, be pissed off. It sucked. It was probably a bad idea done by fucking imperialists out for vengeance. I don't think those were good boys either on the other side of the First World War. That was a disaster. But we're not asking the questions of like, okay, when the going gets not even that tough, like apparently things are not even that bad in Sonnenberg, but we're all just like, oh, well, I guess it's just fascism again. Like,
Yeah, it's like fucking windmills. Too many windmills. Let's vote for fascists.
Exactly.
It's like
I'm annoyed that there's a war. Let's vote for the people who agree with that war. Like, it's demented logic. And then we all have these hand-wringing arguments about like, oh, well, is it the gendering thing in the German language? And I think people are pissed off with the culture war. No, it's not about the issues. It's about fascism and we are like populism, whatever. Like this swing, it happens the same every time. It doesn't fucking matter whether it's the Treaty of Versailles or the reunification of Germany. The same stuff is happening and we talk about it as if it hasn't happened before and if it's not the same thing, and we don't ask difficult questions like why, when the going even gets a little bit tough, do we allow this to happen?
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, that was a real rant. I
don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know.
Better now.
I wish I could console you in some way, but I don't know if I have any answers. I mean, there is like, what are you going to do? I mean, people vote for them, so what are you going to do? You have to sort of.
But this is the interesting thing.
You have to offer a solution. I mean, because you were talking about the CDU, and there is like a bit of an infight in the CDU about, you know, how to deal with this. Whereas Merz is much more of the populist side, and then there are other figures in the CDU who are much more, well, we have to, you know, be professional about this, and we have to kind of present ourselves as a party of government that can do things in a sensible way, like a managerial government. And our old friend Markus Söder is in the middle of this debate now because he's got an election coming up in Bavaria, and he's also like he's often like a politician who's in the past said things that sound like he's trying to get AfD voters back on side, you know, and that was. But I think he has realised that isn't working. Also, he's under kind of slightly different pressure because the AfD isn't that strong in Bavaria.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different.
It's a different thing. So he doesn't mind that much. But Friedrich Merz, one of the things he said when he became leader of the CDU is, I want to halve the AfD's election results, by the next election. That was his thing. So he's trying to, but it's not worked because in fact it's the AFD's election results. If there was an election tomorrow, would be double as what they were last time. They got about 10%, and now they're on about 20% nationally. And so whatever Merz is doing is not working. And so there is like a. But
I also think that's the more you say things like, we want to win over those reasonable voters, whatever. I'm not talking about maybe I am you are handing people, and I think this is where other parties and politicians, people are not voting in a vacuum. They're voting after reading the newspapers, they're listening to radio, and all of this narrative of, well, it's a protest vote, and if there weren't these culture wars and everything. I'm not saying obviously you have to report on that, but there also has to be this question of but that's still not any reason, like you said, just because you don't like windmills.
Yeah.
Why are you going to vote for basically the Nazi Party take two?
I know, because it's not as if there are too many windmills. I mean, it's not as if
barely enough. But this is the thing, and I think we're it's the short-sightedness of it that just really rankles and sticks in my craw, and then just no one wants to take any fucking responsibility for anything.
There are a couple of what is worrying a lot of people is that there are these elections coming up in the states where the AFD is strong at the moment, especially Brandenburg, Thüringen, and Saxony. They all have state elections coming up, but only next year, like a year in the next September, October. So who knows? Anything could happen by then. But at the moment, in all those three states, the AFD are either first or second in the strength.
Yeah.
As the biggest party.
I think everyone is so afraid of offending people who are voting for the AFD, particularly those who are trying to curry favour, that we're actually you can be really critical of the AFD and the concept of voting for them without making people in Eastern Germany feel kind of forgotten, and absolutely were, and were really hard done by the reunification. But that doesn't mean that then we then just it's the weirdest thing, just no one is talking I don't know. You have to be able to be hey, look, who is this Sesselmann? What are his politics? I read something today, it was according to the AFD website. I was well, could we what's his history? What's his job? Is he anyway?
What
have we got?
Oh, there's other news.
Is there? Good. Is it good?
Well, it is in a way.
How about it? I'm all ears.
So last Friday, the Bundestag passed a new skilled worker immigration law.
That sounds good.
And it's we've talked about it before, but it involves. But now it's actually in the books. It's been voted and it won, and it's called. It involves this new opportunity card. It means that you can now come to Germany from a non-EU country without having an actual job yet. That's the main difference. Okay. So you can come here and you can live here for a year and look for a job. And the prerequisite for this is that you have some kind of qualification, either a university degree or a vocational craftsman, whatever, skilled qualification in your own country, and then you can come here for a year. And then there's a point system, which I think is similar to what they have in Canada. This is all about global competition for workforce, which is what.
Please come here. German's impossible, by the way. Oh, and there's fucking fascism on their eyes. Please, foreigners, come and work for us. You can have a card.
Yeah, so that is the big problem. There's a massive Germany's at a massive disadvantage because of the language and because of the Nazis, and so it's really struggling. So and the thing is, I often end up writing articles about this because it's kind of a popular subject with our readership.
Sorry, that was just such well, Germany's at a disadvantage because of the language and because of the Nazis.
It's like a combination of the case endings and a history of genocide. It's just like...
Genitive and genocide. Sorry, I'm really not making light. I think everyone is clear that we're not making light of genocide here, but fucking hell.
So that is that makes it difficult for Germany to get people to move here, and Germany, like every Western country, has an aging population, a lack of work, everything. I don't know if you've been to the doctor recently, but the doctors in Berlin are all having to shut down for certain days because they don't have enough nurses and people helping, and try getting an electrician in Berlin.
Oh God, I know. I've had no electricity in 2 rooms of my house since the 25th of April. Still don't.
Right, yeah. So all that kind of stuff.
Chaining extension cords. Okay. Which is probably bad, but
Yeah. So they passed this new law, right. And there was a debate in the parliament about it, and everyone was like, okay, yeah, I see that we need this law, but why do you have to bring in, especially like the AfD and the CDU, were going like, why do you have to bring in people who can't speak German? Because that was one of the things. Like, they lowered the entry level for German on the point system. So instead of I don't know.
Do you know what it actually? That'd be kind of interesting.
So yeah.
Do we know what it is? Because then I can tell you what that means. I can actually use my subject-specific competencies.
Hang on, I have to Google it quickly. So if you Google Chancenkarte Punktesystem.
Chancenkarte.
That's what it's called. That's an opportunity card. It's also, by the way, this is the good thing about it. It's also available for asylum seekers who are already here, who, even if their asylum cases haven't been decided yet, they can also apply and get this Chancenkarte.
And that means they can look for...
Yeah, they can get a job. I mean, there are lots of people I spoke to who have what's called a Duldung. They have, which is like tolerance status. So they've not been accepted. They're into the asylum system, but they are tolerated, and they are under an obligation to leave the country. But under this new scheme, it covers about 100,000 people apparently.
Okay.
They can apply for this card, and then as they're already here and they probably already have a job. I mean, I spoke to people who are on a Duldung who are working in care homes, so it's actually really important. So so there's this point system.
I can't find what the actual thing is.
I think I want to say
it's endlessly long. Endlessly long articles. Just tell me what I fucking need. No one's going to understand this.
Yeah, so
B1. That's still quite high.
Is that the new one?
Deutsche Sprachkenntnisse etwa auf Niveau B1, so more or less.
But that was the level of the debate in the
B1
Bundestag.
Is not quite fully conversational, I would say. So that's, but enough to function in non-languagey based. And
most of the time, let's face it. I mean, I don't know. You can work in Germany without speaking German. There are quite a lot of jobs you can do without speaking German.
Yeah.
If you've ever ordered a drink in Neukölln, you'll know that.
Yeah.
A lot of people do not speak German.
Yes.
It's fine.
Yes.
You can still earn a living.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is now being decided now.
But the thing is, and it's again, so it's not really about the language, but if you're debating stuff in the Bundestag, a little bit like the integration debate, you can use the word, they don't even speak German.
Yeah.
Well, then go and tell all the Americans in Neukölln to leave. But that's not who you're talking about, is it?
No.
CDU and AfD. You don't care about that. You're talking about a very specific...
I mean, there are other criteria. So one of the criteria is if you have some kind of connection to Germany, if you have some kind of... You've got friends to stay with, and you have to have enough money to live. They don't give you benefits. You got to live. You got to be able to pay for your own upkeep for a year as well. So it's actually quite a watered down immigration law, but it's
barely anything really.
But it's.
But anyway.
So that's that.
Okay.
I don't know how to segue into the other news.
Fine, let's do it. What have you been up to this week, Conrad, other than...
Human rights is an issue.
Yeah, it is. Maybe this is just our Germany pick a fucking lane episode.
Okay. So one of the interesting things that is happening is that there was a court case a couple of years ago in Koblenz of someone who was in the Syrian secret police was prosecuted. 2 people were prosecuted for torturing people in Syria during the Civil War. Now, they happened to be in Germany and they were caught and they were prosecuted and they were like, they were part of the regime there, and and this was like a bit of a precedent that was set because it's the first time that you can prosecute non-German citizens for crimes that happened outside Germany. Now,
interesting. And this was the German.
Yeah, it's something called
courts doing this. It wasn't like a.
Yeah, it's not like the International Criminal Court or the The Hague or anything. This is like which would be they're notoriously not as powerful because it's like a lot of people, if a country just opts out of them, then they can't get prosecuted. But anyway, so in this case, it's called something called universal jurisdiction, and apparently of all the European countries, the German law is particularly open to this kind of prosecution.
Okay.
And in that case, there were 2 people. They happened to be in Germany. They posed as refugees, and then they were caught, and then they were prosecuted. And this is now happening more and more. Now there's a group called ECCHR, which is a group of human rights lawyers, actually based just around the corner here, and they are prosecuting. They are putting together cases against individuals, if they can identify individuals anywhere in the world, for human rights abuses, anything like torture, war crimes. And they have taken up the case of Jamshid Shamad, who is an Iranian dissident who was abducted in 2020 by the Iranian basically the Iranian Secret Service. He was publishing websites. He was like a dissident. He was publishing websites in the US. He was living in the US, but he was also a German citizen. And they basically swooped in. He was in Dubai at the time. They swooped in and deported him like a few years ago. And it's a terrible story. And he was then, and now he's been in this Iranian prison for 2 years, and he's under a death sentence, and he's been tortured. And his daughter gave a press conference in Berlin last week in which she said that she's joined forces with this ECCHR, these human rights lawyers, and now they are prosecuting, and they've named various judges and heads of Iranian Secret Service as defendants. Those are suspects in this case, and they've pressed charges, and they've sent these charges to the federal prosecutor in Karlsruhe, which is where the federal prosecutor is. Yeah. And because this guy happens to be a German citizen, because he moved to Germany when he was young, and he became a citizen in the 90s, the German prosecutor is obliged to investigate the case. And because they've named these judges and these people, they have to put the prosecutors, theoretically anyway, they have to put together a case against them. So, and now what could happen theoretically is that if any of these people leave Iran and go to another country, which has...
They can be taken?
They could theoretically, Germany could apply...
back, counter...
Well, no, there are extradition agreements, right? So the German prosecutor could say to whichever country he goes to, like say Venezuela or somewhere, he goes to Venezuela or Tunisia, and they could say, we have evidence that this person committed a crime. We have an international arrest warrant. Please arrest him and deport him to Germany so he can be prosecuted in a German court. Now that is now all legally possible. Yeah. So this is what this is how this
I hope it happens.
So this is what this group is doing, and what is kind of happening at the moment. So that it at the very least it forces the German government to pay attention, and they have to apply extra pressure, and it also forces the German judiciary and prosecutors to do something about this. So it's it's an interesting case, and it's kind of it's an interesting thing that happens that is possible under German law. Yeah, this universal jurisdiction thing that has already happened. So we will await developments to see if that can happen.
Okay.
But it kind of like, with all these human rights abuses, you just think, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, it happens in the, whatever happens. And it's the same. In fact, the same group has now put out a court, now pressed charges against members of the Russian military about over what is happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so the point is that it's like another legal means that can be used to apply pressure. Like it's obviously. It's going to be very difficult to get certain Russian generals in the dock in Germany, but it's another way of making these cases public. And in the case of this Iranian guy, what we do know about is every time he is mentioned in the media, this Jamshid Shamid guy, it helps to delay his execution. I mean, it helps to it does make a difference. Like these people, they don't necessarily want to kill them if they're in the news all the time. So you never know. So it's worthwhile. Is the point?
Exactly. I agree. Even if it only seems to be like one case and we don't know the outcome, or like you said, there's very little chance of these Russian military personnel being held to any, but like. We still have to do those things like meaningfully, because it's about like taking a stance, I think, in the world, and like being like, no, this is what we're here for. This is important, and every little person matters. Yeah.
And if you talk to Iranian people in Berlin, they do care about what Germany thinks and what is happening in German society, and because there's protests going on now, and they were suppressed, and there's terrible things happening in Iran. So
it matters.
Anyway, so that's going on.
Well, that's good. I mean, not for that per person, but
so that wasn't really a very light story to end on, was it?
I mean, it's lighter, but that's only because it was preceded by,
yeah,
all the rest.
All the rest of it.
Oh, God. All right. Well, that's that.
That is that.
How's your mega can? Mine's delicious. Haven't really eaten very much today, apart from those Adnos flips, which I was obsessively munching before we started recording, and which I am going back to as soon as we sign off. But
they do really help, mega cans, don't they? They do actually really help. I mean, if all else fails, a cocktail in a can does lift your mood.
It does. It does, I have to say. Like, hats off to the news people doing this stone cold sober.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they need more of, these people who are reporting. You got to get a bit loosened up. There's a lot of, like, you have to numb yourself to the news. If you're, like, I feel I can let it go in, get angry, and then feel better about it a little bit. I don't know. I'm just quite drunk now, so.
You know what's coming up in the autumn?
Oh, God. Is it... I don't know. What are we running again? We're all going down to march around Nuremberg for the crack. Honestly,
it's the Bavarian state election.
Oh, fuck yeah, we are.
So what that means is we can pay more attention to Marcus Söder's Instagram account. It
is a thing of beauty. It is the only good thing about that man. Apart from his cool masks during Corona times, so he was quite sensible about Corona, but everything else is a disaster. Oh, he drives me crazy. I don't want to hear anything more about him. I don't. When autumn, why? Oh, Conrad.
Well, I thought I would cheer you up. He gave a prize to Angela Merkel the other day. It's the Bavarian. It's like a special Bavarian prize. I don't know what it was exactly meant, but
he is exactly the kind of boomer nightmare that's going to be like, well, I want to honour Angela Merkel, and Angela's like, fuck you, Marcus. Like, I don't, just leave me alone.
No, she came and accepted his prize.
She has to.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. It's polite, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what it is, like the freedom of Bavaria, what it is. It means you can have all the Milka you want.
Freistadt-Bayern. All of the things and all of the...
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got that to look forward to, and then we've got the ones next year, which might end up going to the AfD, in which case...
Yeah.
I might be out.
You're not going to hang around for dual citizenship? You can speak German and everything now.
I have done everything. What more do I need to be allowed to vote? It's just, honestly, yeah, that dual citizenship, yes, that's good. Let's get that done, because then a whole load more different people are going to be able to vote. We might actually start, can you imagine what they look like when people start falling over themselves to get the migrant vote? Fucking class. They're going to be like, oh, have this, have that.
Yeah.
Or they're going to appeal to people's populism, because that's all, I don't know. But I would be very excited if I got to go and vote.
Oh, it's the European election. You can...
Oh, yeah, everyone's like, you can do the European. Who gives a shit? Still don't even understand how it works. The EU.
Yeah, it's a bit pointless, I think.
We'll be out of it anyway if the AfD have their way, so fuck. I won't even have that left. There's a lot of sirens today. We apologise for this. Sorry, I'm just continuing to talk because I want to finish my megacam.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I live on a kind of slip road for ambulances and fire engines.
Yeah, you're quite close to the hospital, aren't you?
Yeah, so that kind of happens if I have the windows open.
All right, everyone.
Anything else to add? I mean, we've been talking for ages. We should really be stopping now. I don't even know where we're carrying on talking.
Oh, sorry, everybody. Sorry that was the news. Particularly sorry to people who are, unlike myself, actually affected by the horrible policies, or not even policies, not even fucking policies, but like rhetoric of fascism.
Have a lovely day, everyone.
Have a lovely time. It's fine. Go have a megacan and get some Adnos flips into you, and then you'll be fine.
Enjoy the warm summer evenings. Bye.
Bye.